Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. So happy anniversary to the triple tank meta. Around this time last year was when we saw the likes of quadruple tank and triple tank pretty much taking over competitive, but also the esports scene back then as well. A lot has changed since then. We've had lots of buffs and nerfs that have meant triple tanks is a thing of the past. We've had a big series of dive metas as well, but with Moira added into a game, a lot of players are concerned that we're going to see triple tank coming back to some extent, and even added triple support into the mix as well for that added sustain. Now, we did a video going over the sustain meta way back when around BlizzCon, and we discussed that this was a problem and Blizzard acknowledged it as a problem as well. So people are a little bit worried that over the coming weeks triple tank may come back in some big fashion, but I want to play devil's advocate here on why triple tank won't return, or at least in the same way that it worked last year. Obviously, I can't predict the future. It's still possible that we may see triple tanks down the line, but I really want to stress how the game is in a much better state to avoid something like this, but also to avoid forced metas in general, other than of course the thing that we saw with Mercy a few weeks ago. And that's what I really wanted to highlight in this video. We're not against the idea of triple tank being a composition it can use now and again. People still play dive. It's just the idea of a forced meta that you can only play dive or you can only play triple tank, and picking anything that isn't one of these two things means that you're throwing and you're not doing your job. We're in a very viable and flexible hero meta currently where everything goes basically, so let's keep it that way. The first major reason, coming as no surprise, is the difference in Ana. Ana has recently come back into play with the changes on the PTR. They are buffs, you'd be right in thinking that, but they are actually a revert of a nerf way back when we saw when Ana was a little bit too strong. There were a few other bits and pieces, but the two main ones that I want to focus on here are the biotic rifle's damage was nerfed from 80 to 60, and the biotic grenade, this is more important, the impact damage reduced to 30, and the impact healing reduced to 50. And now this was a big thing with triple tanks. Ana's grenade was great at just healing up a ton of big targets. It gave her a lot of ult charge. It was great sustain when you have a Lucia on your team as well, to keeping those big tanky targets alive. Lucia is kind of another minor reason why we want to see triple tank coming back. Not a major reason in itself, but of course Lucia has changed in that time as well. He has a radius on his healing now. It's a little bit more potent, which might make him a bit stronger. But remember that Lucia's pick rate has suffered a little bit in ranked, just because there's so many more exciting options to play, and more impactful options seemingly to play in competitive. So certainly how the supports work in this category is a big thing. Moira is very good at that death ball kind of play, so that's the thing that's got a lot of players worried. The next person on our list is D.Va. D.Va is a hero that was incredibly strong during the triple tank meta, and she has been changed significantly throughout. She lost a ton of armor. She had 400 armor, 200 health way back when. That was flipped over, so she has 400 health, 200 armor now, which she still does. She was like this for a while, but still considered overpowered. She could eat a lot of damage. But of course, later on, she had a big nerf to her defense matrix, basically halving the time that it was useful and making sure that he regened a lot slower as well. She did get the addition of being able to fly while shooting and moving around while shooting as well in that time, and also some rockets, but ultimately when it comes to that damage mitigation, D.Va just isn't half as good as she used to be, and she was a major reason why triple tank worked in that capacity, just with the amount of damage that she could eat up, and not only that, take damage as well by mitigating it with the armor that she had. And because of that, she was one of the staple people that caused the triple tank meta to be. Granted, you could just take D.Va out of this lineup and put in a Zarya, Roadhog, or Risa, and it would still maybe get results. I'm certainly accepting that as an argument. However, again, it's the idea that triple tank now just wouldn't be as strong as triple tank back then. But there's also some other changes when it comes to how to deal with triple tanks anyway that makes it much harder for this lineup to work. I'm of course talking about the tank counters, and I have to start with Reaper. Reaper is another hero that has had changes since the last time that we saw triple tank. He doesn't eat on souls anymore. Instead, he regens a bit of health from every bit of damage that he does, about 10% or so. And because of this, he can stay involved in the fight, and he really wants to go after the tanks if he can help it. Anybody that plays Hog, Winston, Reinhardt will know how much of a tough time Reaper can be, and we all know that Reaper is coming back in some capacity. He's not the most popular pick in the world, but he does have viability when you're running into a good tank combo. Not only that, he's just very good in a death ball kind of team when you are able to just run at the enemy. Me and one amongst many play a lot of the like Reaper Reinhardt combination and just run at the enemy, and a lot of the time they don't really know what to do. And because of the lack of Lucio that we went over earlier, it can be very difficult to disengage from that kind of thing, especially if you go in with a Lucio on your team and they don't. So he's certainly a big reason to why triple tank won't work. There's not as much defense matrix. All of these big beefy tanks can't really take a Reaper that's just going to run at them. But then you also have the defensive options, and I'm talking about the likes of Orisa, Junkrat, Bastion, which are our fourth reason why triple tanks aren't going to come back in this capacity. Of course, Orisa is a completely new hero, and I think in some capacity she was made to sort of counter triple tanks almost, with the idea that she could put a shield, create some space for her team, and just mow down anybody that comes near her. You add that in with the changes to Junkrat and Bastion not so much, but definitely Junkrat, that can spam a lot of damage and will eat up those tanks and get a lot of ult chad from it as well. The idea for triple tanks is to not really put out as much damage as a 2-2-2 lineup, but you have more sustain and staying on the point. And frankly, this is a situation that Junkrat relishes in. If there's big beefy targets to hit, he will sure as hell hit them. And of course, Bastion as well, who has had changes this year, but that's not really the point. It's the idea that people are more likely to experiment with their picks and pick out the heroes like Bastion and also Doomfist as well. That's kind of good against tanks when it comes to surprising the enemy and making sure that they can counter quite a vanilla lineup at this point to take down. And finally, we go over the last reason, which is more looking at varied maps. Now, during the triple tank meta, we had a lot of closed up chokes and stuff like that. Eichenwald is a prime example of that first choke, but you definitely saw triple tanks on the likes of King's Row and those kind of maps because they're very flat. There's not a lot of mobile sort of lineups. But since then, we have seen the likes of Junkertown and Oasis. Horizon, not so much unless you're talking about the second point. But what I'm getting at is the maps in Overwatch have changed, so they try not to really focus on fights in little choke points. They try and open a map up quite a lot, like Junkertown or second point on Horizon. And certainly Oasis as well, if you disclude University, it's a very vast open map, which means that you really struggle to play heroes like Reinhardt in those areas, meaning that you don't really have the protection and lineup to really make triple tanks work. Of course, if you're a good enough team, you can make it work, that's not what I'm saying. But it's more that maps seem to be designed to counter against the likes of triple tanks. But honestly, it kind of promotes dive a lot more, which we have seen earlier this year as well. But that is everything I wanted to go over in this video. They're the 5 main reasons that I think the triple tank isn't going to come back in the same style as last year. I do think it's a viable composition. I think you should play it in your own games. I'm not against the idea. But it's more, I don't think we're going to see a forced meta with Moira where we're going to see free tanks constantly, and if you don't play free tanks, you're going to lose in a similar style to if you don't play Mercy before, then you were going to lose if they had a Mercy. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Would you welcome back triple tanks? Do you think it's the worst meta in the game that we've seen so far? And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.